Evelyn Holt stepped through the tall iron gates of the King Estate in Buckhead, the venue glittering with warm lights and expensive flowers as guests moved about in designer clothing that cost more than her monthly pension. She held her small purse close and smoothed the front of her simple navy dress, trying to calm the tightness in her chest. Today was her son Malik's wedding, yet she felt like she was walking into a place where she was never meant to belong. A wedding coordinator with a cold smile approached her, the clipboard tucked tightly to her chest. "Name?" she asked. "Evelyn Holt," she replied softly. "The groom's mother." The coordinator blinked once, quickly, as if the title surprised her. "Yes, you're in row 12, seat 15, she said, gesturing toward the very back. All the way down. Evelyn followed her pointed hand. Row 12, seat 15, the last section. Nearly behind the floral structures, so far from the altar, she could barely see the string quartet warming up. She walked down the aisle past rows filled with polished, wealthy guests who gave her long, curious glances. She heard the faint whispers, subtle but cutting. "That's Malik's mother? She doesn't look like the rest of them. I heard she used to work simple jobs." None of it was true, but none of them cared. She had raised Malik alone while teaching high school English for nearly 4 decades, but accomplishments meant nothing to these people. All they saw was that she wasn't born into their world. She reached her lonely seat at the end of the last row and sat down carefully. From here, the ceremony felt distant, as if she were only a spectator at a stranger's event. She clasped her hands together and looked toward the front, where the families of the bride and groom were seated proudly in the first 3 rows, except her. Vanessa's family, the Whitmores, sat tall and regal at the front, their wealth and prestige displayed like trophies. Not one of them acknowledged her presence. Vanessa herself had always found polite ways to keep Evelyn out of view, telling Malik that her simple lifestyle didn't fit well with high society appearances. Malik never argued. He stood at the altar now, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored tuxedo. He looked confident, successful, every bit the man he had become. But Evelyn couldn't stop remembering the little boy who used to run into her arms after school, telling her she was his best friend in the world. The ceremony music swelled as the guests rose. Vanessa appeared at the top of the steps, her gown shimmering in the evening light. She moved down the aisle like royalty, perfect from head to toe. As she passed the last rows, she didn't look left or right. Not even once. Evelyn's heart tightened, but she forced herself to keep her spine straight. The minister began speaking, his rich voice flowing through the open-air venue. Everyone watched the couple with admiration and excitement, completely unaware of the woman sitting in the shadows at the back, unnoticed, unacknowledged, unimportant. Evelyn tried to steady her breathing. She had imagined this day so many times, standing close to her son, embracing him proudly, being part of the celebration. Instead, she was hidden behind elaborate floral arrangements, a seat chosen to make her presence as small and invisible as possible. She looked at Malik again, hoping he might turn, might search for her face, might offer even the faintest sign that he still knew she mattered. He didn't. As the vows continued, Evelyn sat perfectly still, swallowing the ache forming in her throat. She wasn't just in the back. She was placed there intentionally, a silent reminder that she wasn't part of Malik's new world. And nothing in all her years of hardship had ever hurt as sharply as realizing her own son wanted her hidden on the most important day of his life. Evelyn kept her eyes fixed on the ceremony, trying to ignore the sting of being pushed into the shadows. When a quiet shift in the air made her glance to her right, a tall, distinguished black man had stepped into the back row, dressed in a charcoal suit that fit him with effortless authority. His presence alone drew subtle glances from nearby guests, as though they sensed importance before they even saw his face. Without asking, he paused beside her chair. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, his voice deep, controlled, and warm. Evelyn shook her head. "No, it's not." He sat beside her, and for a moment she wondered why a man who clearly belonged in the front, not the back, had chosen this spot. Before she could think further, the man leaned toward her slightly, never touching but close enough that his words were for her ears alone. "Act like you're with me," he murmured. Evelyn blinked, startled. I don't understand." "You don't have to," he said quietly. "Just follow my lead." As he sat upright, his posture tall and unmistakably confident, heads in the rows ahead began to subtly turn. People who hadn't spared Evelyn a single glance earlier suddenly seemed unsure of who she was or who she was with. Whispers shifted. Who's he with? That man looks familiar. He must be someone important. The change was immediate, almost electric. The man didn't touch her, didn't make a scene, didn't even look at her directly. Yet simply by sitting beside her, he altered the atmosphere around them. Where there had been disdain, now there was curiosity bordering on respect. Evelyn kept her eyes on the ceremony, but inside her heart raced with confusion. Why would a stranger do this for her? Why would he care? Then she noticed something else. He wasn't watching the bride or the decorations. He was watching Malik, very specifically watching the moment when Malik finally succeeded in ignoring his own mother. The stranger's jaw tightened subtly, as if he didn't approve of what he saw. A few minutes into the vows, the man leaned in again, his voice low and smooth. You shouldn't be sitting back here. Evelyn swallowed hard. My son and his fiancée placed me here. His eyes flicked toward the front again. I figured. There was a weight behind his tone, something that hinted he understood far more than he was saying. Evelyn studied him more closely, taking in his silver-threaded hair, the sharp line of his jaw, and the quiet strength that radiated from him. He looked like someone who lived in boardrooms, someone who made decisions that moved cities, someone who had never been overlooked a day in his life. Yet here he was, sitting in the last row beside her when the guests laughed softly at a joke the minister made. The man finally turned his head toward her fully. You don't remember me, do you? Her breath caught, his eyes deep, steady. Familiar held hers with a recognition that ignited something long buried. I'm sorry, she whispered. Should I? He offered a faint smile, one corner of his mouth lifting with a mixture of warmth and something like disbelief. It's been almost 50 years. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. Evelyn's heartbeat stumbled. 50 years? Who was he? He leaned back slightly, his voice softer now. My name is Theo Blackwell. Evelyn froze. The noise of guests, the music, the vows, all of it faded for a moment. Theo, the boy who had walked her home every afternoon her junior year. The boy she had loved before life pulled her into survival. The boy her strict, unyielding mother had ripped her away from when she was 17. Theo Blackwell had vanished from her life without a trace, and now he was sitting beside her, grown powerful, composed, looking at her like he had finally found something that had been missing for decades. She stared at him, her breath shaking as memories pushed their way to the surface. Theo? She whispered, his eyes softened deeply, intensely. It's me, Evelyn. Before she could gather a single thought, the ceremony applause erupted around them. Malik kissed his bride. The crowd rose to their feet, and in the very last row, Evelyn sat frozen, her heart pounding as Theo Blackwell, her first love, her lost love, looked at her like fate had finally returned something it stole. As the guests filed out toward the reception lawn, Evelyn remained seated, still struggling to breathe steadily. Malik and Vanessa were surrounded by applause and cameras, while Theo rose from his chair with the quiet confidence of a man who never needed attention to command it. He extended a hand toward her. Walk with me, he said. The way he spoke wasn't a request. Yet it wasn't forceful either. It was the tone of someone who had waited a very long time to speak again. Evelyn hesitated, unsure whether her legs would carry her, but she finally placed her trembling hand in his. His grip was warm, steady, familiar in a way that sent a subtle shock through her. Theo led her away from the crowd, through the garden path lined with lanterns and flowering magnolia trees. When they were far enough from the noise of the celebration, he stopped beneath an archway of vines, the evening light tracing a soft glow across his features. 50 years, he said quietly. And you're still the same Evelyn I remember. Her heart ached at his words, but she struggled to make sense of the moment. Theo, I thought you forgot me. You never wrote. You never called. You never came. A long, heavy silence followed. Theo took a slow breath, his expression tightening, not with anger toward her, but with something deeper, heavier. That's because I wasn't allowed to, he finally said. Evelyn, I sent letters, dozens. I called your house. I showed up twice. Your mother wouldn't even let me near the porch. Evelyn's eyes widened. She felt her chest tighten as the truth sliced through her like a blade. My mother told me you moved on. She said you never tried. Theo shook his head, a low, disbelieving exhale escaping him. Your mother intercepted everything. She told me you didn't want to hear from me again. She made it clear I wasn't welcome in your family. Evelyn felt her knees weaken. Shame, grief, and clarity rushed through her all at once. She controlled everything. I wasn't even allowed to talk to boys. She said you weren't good enough, that you were a distraction, that a future with you would ruin my chances in life. His voice dropped, quiet but full of emotion. You were the best part of my life, Evelyn. I didn't let go because I wanted to. I stopped trying because your mother convinced me you already had. Tears stung Evelyn's eyes, but she blinked them back. I thought you forgot me. I thought I meant nothing to you. I told myself I had imagined everything we had. Theo stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. You didn't imagine it, he said softly. I spent years searching for you. I wrote to the school you were supposed to attend. I asked mutual friends. I tried everything. But every trail ended with your mother shutting the door. Evelyn pressed a hand over her mouth as the full truth unraveled. Her mother had stolen her first love. Stolen a future she never even got to try choosing for herself. Theo watched her quietly, giving her space to breathe through the revelation. When she finally found her voice again, it was low and trembling. You never married? He shook his head. I dated. But I never found anyone who made me feel the way you did. I kept comparing, and it wasn't fair to them. Her heart clenched. And you built a life, a successful one. I did, he admitted. But it never felt complete. Evelyn wiped her cheek, trying to compose herself. Theo, all those years I thought you were gone. I thought you'd moved on, moved away, forgotten everything about me. I never forgot you, he said simply. Not once. The music from the reception floated across the garden, soft and distant, contrasting painfully with the truth being uncovered between them. Evelyn looked down, overwhelmed, but Theo reached out gently and lifted her chin with his fingertips. You deserved better than what they did to you, he said. And you deserve better now. Her breath trembled. For the first time that day, someone saw her not as an embarrassment, not as an obligation, but as someone who mattered. Theo let his hand fall slowly, yet his eyes never left hers. I didn't come here for them, he said. I came here because when I heard Malik was getting married in Atlanta, I wondered if you might be here too. A single tear escaped before she could stop it. Theo stepped just close enough that she felt the heat of his presence. Not overbearing, but protective. After 50 years, he whispered. I finally found you again. Before Evelyn could speak again, hurried footsteps echoed down the garden path. Malik appeared first, his tuxedo jacket slightly unbuttoned as if he had rushed. Vanessa followed a few steps behind, her gown gathered in one hand to avoid the grass. Her expression was tight, irritated, and suspicious. Mom? Malik called, scanning the garden until his eyes landed on her and immediately flicked to the tall man beside her. His brows rose sharply. What's going on? Who is this? Vanessa stepped forward with a brittle smile, the kind that cracked at the corners. Yes, Mrs. Holt, we were looking for you at the reception. We didn't realize you'd wandered off. She emphasized the last words as though Evelyn were a confused elderly woman who needed supervision. Theo didn't move. He simply stood beside Evelyn with the quiet steadiness of a man who understood power and didn't need to flaunt it. I asked your mother to join me, he said calmly. We were catching up. Malik blinked, confused. Catching up? Catching up? With who? Theo turned toward him fully. Theo Blackwell. The name hung in the air. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly, recognition flickering beneath the surface, but she tried to hide it quickly. Malik, however, didn't understand the weight of the introduction yet. And you are? Malik asked, clearly uncomfortable but trying to sound polite. Theo's voice remained even. Someone who knew your mother long before you were even thought of. Vanessa stiffened, her smile tightening. Well, Mr. Blackwell, this is a private family event. Perhaps you didn't realize. Theo's gaze slid toward her with a calmness that made Vanessa falter mid-sentence. I realized exactly where I was, he said. And I also realized exactly how your mother-in-law was seated. Vanessa's cheeks flushed. Malik shifted uneasily, looking at Evelyn as if he hoped this conversation would disappear if he stayed quiet. Theo stepped forward, just enough to make his next words land with precision. I saw the seating chart. I saw where Evelyn was placed. And I saw how neither of you bothered to notice. Malik bristled. Now hold on. No, Theo cut in, his tone still calm but carrying a quiet authority that silenced everyone. You don't get to hold on, not when you sat your own mother in the shadows of your wedding. Evelyn's breath caught. She had never heard someone defend her like that, not publicly, not firmly, not without hesitation. Vanessa stepped closer to Malik, lowering her voice. Perhaps we should continue this conversation another time. This is not the place. This is exactly the place, Theo said. Because this is where you tried to pretend she didn't exist. Malik's face tightened with embarrassment. Mr. Blackwell, with all due respect, Theo's expression didn't change. Respect? He repeated. I've been here less than an hour, and I've shown your mother more respect than either of you have shown her all day. Silence fell. Guests in the distance were laughing, clinking glasses, celebrating, but here in the Magnolia Garden, the truth hung between them. Malik swallowed. You know my mother well enough to talk like that? Theo's eyes softened subtly as he glanced at Evelyn. I knew her when she was young, and I see who she still is now. Evelyn lowered her gaze, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. Vanessa, sensing the shift in Malik's posture, stepped forward quickly. Well, she said sharply, whatever history you two have is none of our concern. This is our wedding. And frankly, Mrs. Holt has been overwhelmed. She's not used to events like this, so maybe she misinterpreted. Theo turned to face her, and Vanessa's words died instantly. Nothing was misinterpreted, he said. You and your family made her small tonight. You made her invisible. And you did it intentionally. Malik finally let out a frustrated breath. Okay, that's enough. Mom, why didn't you tell us you knew someone like me? Theo finished for him. Someone who doesn't measure worth by money or status? Someone who sees her as more than an accessory you can hide behind floral arrangements? Malik looked away. Ashamed. Vanessa crossed her arms. Who exactly are you to speak to us like this? Theo paused, studying her with a measured look, one that carried far more power than raised voices ever could. I'm someone you should have been polite to before asking, he said. But to satisfy your curiosity, you'll learn soon enough. The tension thickened. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably, sensing something she didn't have the words for. Theo turned to Evelyn, his tone gentler. You don't need to defend yourself to anyone here. Not anymore. She stared at him, her heart trembling. Malik stepped forward, hands raised. Mom, let's go back inside. We're about to start the reception, and no, Theo said quietly. She's not going back inside until she chooses to. Evelyn felt her throat tighten, not from humiliation this time, but from something she hadn't felt in years. Someone standing beside her. Steady, unwavering, unbending. Theo looked at Malik and Vanessa one last time. The way you treat her says everything about you. And believe me, it will matter. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He didn't need to. His words carried the weight of a man who wasn't accustomed to being ignored. Malik and Vanessa stood frozen, unsure whether they had just encountered trouble or fate. Theo extended his hand to Evelyn again. Come on, he murmured softly. Let's step away from all this. For the first time that day, Evelyn didn't feel small. She felt seen. She placed her hand in his. And together they walked deeper into the garden, leaving behind the wedding, the spectators, and the people who had forgotten her worth. Theo guided Evelyn toward the estate's front courtyard, away from the music, the chatter, and the sting of the wedding she had just escaped. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of magnolias from the garden. Evelyn's steps were unsteady at first, but Theo stayed close beside her, solid, steady, unshakable. When they reached the roundabout where luxury cars were parked, Theo reached into his inside jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. His expression shifted, calm sharpening into the controlled intensity of a man who made decisions that others obeyed. "I need you to check something for me," he said into the phone once it connected. "The lease terms for the Whitmore and Carter office space." "Yes, the building on Peachtree." A pause. The one I acquired last month." Evelyn's breath caught. Vanessa's family headquarters. The very building Malik worked in. Theo owned it. Theo's voice stayed low and even. "I want an updated report sent to my email in the next hour. And inform maintenance that I'll be sending someone by this week to review the property." Another pause. "No, nothing urgent. Just overdue adjustments." He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his jacket as if he had just ordered dinner. Calm, casual, powerful. Evelyn stared at him, stunned. "Theo, you own that building?" He nodded once. "Acquired it about 30 days ago. Their company has been negotiating a renewal. They don't know yet that the final decision will run through me." His voice softened as he looked at her. "Now they will." Evelyn pressed a hand to her chest, overwhelmed. "Theo, I didn't want to cause trouble." "You didn't," he replied. "They caused it themselves. I'm simply not going to let them treat you like you're disposable." Before she could respond, a sleek black car pulled up. Theo opened the passenger door for her with an ease that felt both old-fashioned and deeply respectful. She hesitated for a moment, looking back toward the estate. "Your son made his choices tonight," Theo said quietly. "You're allowed to choose yourself." Evelyn took a slow breath and stepped inside. The interior smelled of leather and cedarwood. Soft jazz played through the speakers as Theo slid into the driver's seat beside her and pulled away from the estate. Leaving the glittering lights of the wedding fading in the rearview mirror, he drove them into the heart of Atlanta, stopping at an elegant, dimly lit restaurant with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. Inside, the staff instantly recognized him. "Good evening, Mr. Blackwell," the hostess greeted with a respectful nod. "Your table is ready." They were led to a private corner booth draped in warm light. The city lights glittered behind them, casting a soft glow on Theo's strong features. When the menus arrived, he gestured gently. "Order anything you'd like," he told her. Evelyn looked down at the menu, her fingers trembling slightly. She hadn't been in a place like this in years. "Theo, I don't know where to begin." "Start with what you enjoy," he said. "Not what you think you should choose." His words landed deeper than she expected. Once the waiter left, Theo leaned back slightly. "Tell me about your life," he said, and Evelyn did. She told him about meeting Raymond, the man who had loved her deeply and worked tirelessly to build a stable home. She talked about raising Malik on a teacher's salary, about late nights grading papers, about dreams she quietly tucked away to make room for survival. She confessed how lonely the last 3 years had been, how empty the house felt after Raymond passed, how Malik grew distant, how she became a background piece in her own family. Theo listened without interrupting. He didn't pity her. He didn't offer shallow comfort. He absorbed every word with the attentiveness of someone who had waited too long to hear her voice again. Then he spoke softly. "I followed your career from afar, you know." Evelyn blinked. "You did?" He nodded. "When I finally found out your married name years ago, I had my assistant send me updates. Not intrusive ones, just enough to know you were alive, working, raising a son. I saw your retirement announcement. I saw the scholarship your former students set up in your name. You were extraordinary before, and you still are." Her throat tightened. No one had said anything like that to her in years. "You've built a remarkable life," Theo continued. "A quiet one. A good one. But far too many people in your world have forgotten just how much you've given." Evelyn lowered her gaze, overwhelmed. "Theo, why now? Why come today?" His eyes softened as he looked at her across the candlelit table. "Because I heard Malik was getting married. And something in me said, go. I didn't know if you'd be there, or if you'd want to see me, or if you'd remember me at all. But I needed to try." Emotion rose in her chest, warm and painful. "And then," he added, voice dropping, "I saw where they put you. I saw the way they dismissed you. And I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be." Their food arrived, breaking the moment. But the air between them remained thick with 50 years of unfinished history. They ate slowly, talking easily now. Stories, memories, moments long buried but never forgotten. Laughter came softly. So did old wounds. And something else, the beginning of something new rising between them. By the time they left the restaurant, the city lights had softened and the night felt lighter, like the world had shifted. Just slightly, in Evelyn's favor. As Theo walked her to the car, he paused beside her door. "You deserve a life where you're not pushed into corners," he said. "And I intend to make sure you never are again." Evelyn felt her heart tremble in a way she hadn't felt since she was 17. Standing under streetlights with the boy she thought she had lost forever. Tonight, he had found her. By the time Theo dropped Evelyn off at her modest home, the night felt calmer until her phone started vibrating the moment she stepped inside. First once, then again, then again. A rapid string of calls and messages lit up her screen like an alarm. Malik, call on Mom. Where did you go? People were asking. Call me back. Then Vanessa, call on Mrs. Holt. We would appreciate it if you didn't disappear during the reception. It caused confusion. Then another message, this time from an unknown number. But Evelyn recognized the last name in the signature. Mrs. Holt. This is Richard Whitmore, Vanessa's father. We'd like to invite you and Mr. Blackwell to dinner tomorrow evening at the Cypress Club, 7 p.m. The shift was instant and transparent. Hours ago, she was an inconvenience. Now that they'd seen her with Theo, the quiet billionaire who owned their primary office building, they suddenly discovered manners. Evelyn set the phone down, exhaling in disbelief. Theo, who had walked her to the porch, caught her expression. Persistent. You have no idea, she murmured. He gave a knowing smile. Their tone changed fast. It did. Good, let them chase you for once. She let out a soft breath. Theo, I don't want to drag you into family mess. I walked in on my own, he replied. And I'm not going anywhere. His voice held a calm certainty she didn't know how to process. For years, Evelyn had survived on silence, on endurance, on habit. But Theo spoke like a man who intended to stay. That certainty followed her into the next evening. The Cypress Club was one of the most exclusive dining rooms in Atlanta. Dark wood, gold accents, staff trained to recognize power the moment it walked in. Malik and Vanessa were already seated when Evelyn and Theo arrived. Vanessa sat with perfect posture, her smile strained at the edges. Malik kept adjusting his cufflinks, his nerves impossible to hide. Richard and Diane Whitmore sat at the head of the long table, dignified, well-dressed, and radiating the polished arrogance of old money. The moment Theo walked in, the atmosphere shifted. Conversation slowed. Richard Whitmore straightened as if instinctively acknowledging the presence of someone above him in a hierarchy he rarely admitted existed. Mr. Blackwell, Richard said, standing quickly. Honored you could join us. Theo shook his hand briefly. Richard. Evelyn greeted them quietly, and chairs were pulled out, drinks poured, smiles forced. But beneath the polite exterior, tension simmered. Richard cleared his throat. We wanted to gather tonight to smooth over any misunderstandings from yesterday. Theo didn't bother hiding the hint of amusement in his eyes. The misunderstanding being how you treated Evelyn? Vanessa flinched. Malik looked down. Diane spoke next, her tone overly delicate. Emotions run high at weddings. Things are hectic. Perhaps Evelyn simply misinterpreted. No, Theo said. She didn't. Silence fell like a stone. Malik finally looked up. Mom, I'm sorry. I should have checked the seating. I didn't realize you didn't ask, Theo said quietly. That was the problem. Malik's jaw tightened, shame and defensiveness battling behind his eyes. Dinner arrived. An awkward small talk filled the gaps, weather, business, the wedding. But the real conversation began only once the plates were cleared. Richard leaned forward. Mr. Blackwell, we understand you recently acquired the Peachtree building. Our firm occupies 5 floors. We value the space greatly. Theo raised a brow. I'm aware. We hope, Richard continued, that our families can maintain a positive relationship. Evelyn felt their eyes drift toward her as if she were suddenly a bridge. A bargaining chip, a connection worth cultivating. Theo's face didn't change. My relationship with Evelyn is not a business strategy, he said. Treat her with respect because she deserves it, not because of me. The Whitmores fell silent. Vanessa cleared her throat. Mrs. Holt, I also want to apologize. I should have made sure your seat was closer. It was an oversight, and I'm sorry. The apology was stiff, practiced, but the words existed at least. Evelyn nodded politely. Thank you. Malik shifted closer to her. Mom, I'm really sorry. I should have done better. I got caught up. That's not an excuse, but I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't deep, but it was the first real apology he'd given her in years. Throughout the dinner, Theo remained calm, quiet, watchful. He didn't dominate the conversation, but he made it clear without threats, without raised voices, that Evelyn was no longer someone who could be dismissed. Not tonight, not ever again. The dinner ended on a brittle but unmistakably respectful note. When they stepped out into the night, Evelyn exhaled fully for the first time. They were trying so hard, she said, under her breath. Theo offered a faint smile. Fear is a powerful motivator. She shot him a look. Theo, just how much influence do you have over their company? He met her gaze steadily. Enough to make them rethink how they treat every person connected to me. Especially you. Evelyn shook her head softly, overwhelmed. I don't want power. I just wanted dignity. You'll have both, he said simply. With me, you'll never be hidden again. As he held the car door open for her, Evelyn realized something she had never expected to feel at her son's wedding weekend. She no longer felt alone. Evelyn woke the next morning in a quiet house filled with sunlight. Her mind still replaying fragments of the night before: Theo's steady presence, the Whitmores' sudden politeness, Malik's uncertain apology, and the strange, unexpected feeling of finally being seen after years of invisibility. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Malik. Short, direct, familiar in all the wrong ways. Morning. Mom, just checking in. Hope you're feeling okay. I'll stop by later. Malik, the same routine message he always sent, not out of care, out of obligation. Evelyn stared at it for a long moment. For years, she responded politely, predictably, smoothing over tension to keep peace. But last night had changed something inside her, something she didn't want to bury again. Her phone buzzed again. But this time, the name on the screen made her heart lift. Theo call on. Good morning. Evelyn, I'm stopping by around 10. There's something I want to show you. Her pulse fluttered, not with nerves. With something she hadn't felt in decades. Anticipation. Underscore at 10 sharp. Theo arrived in a navy blazer and open-collared shirt. The moment she opened the door, he smiled, a real warm, unguarded smile. You look beautiful, he said simply. She felt her breath catch. I'm just in a sweater and slacks. You make it look like elegance. Evelyn flushed, unused to being spoken to like that. He gestured for her to grab her purse. I want to show you something, he said. Don't worry. It's nothing extravagant. But it was. He drove her to his penthouse overlooking the city floor-to-ceiling windows. Soft neutral tones, art that had stories behind it. It didn't feel cold or lonely. It felt lived in, loved. Come, he said gently, guiding her to the balcony. The view was stunning, but her eyes drifted to the table near the railing, where brochures and travel photos lay neatly arranged. Tuscany? She whispered, picking up one of the glossy pages. It's a place I've always wanted to see with someone who mattered, he said. Life kept getting in the way. He held her gaze, the meaning unmistakable. I want you to travel with me, Evelyn. Not this week. Not next week. But someday soon. When it feels right. Her fingers trembled against the edge of the brochure. Theo, I've never even left the country. Then let it be your first trip, he said, his voice warm. A new beginning, not an escape. Something inside her softened, something that had been hardened by decades of sacrifice. Quiet loneliness and survival. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed sharply. Malik. Calling now. She hesitated, but answered. Mom, he said quickly. I'm outside your house. The car isn't there. Where did you go? Evelyn inhaled slowly. I'm spending the morning with Theo. A stunned silence, then Malik's voice sharpened immediately. You barely know this man. How do you know he's safe? How do you know what he wants? Mom, this is moving too fast. Evelyn's spine straightened. Malik, I'm a grown woman. I'm allowed to enjoy someone's company. That's not what I'm saying, he insisted. But you're vulnerable. And I just think… You think what? She interrupted quietly. That I should sit at home and wait for you to remember me between meetings. That I shouldn't have a life unless it fits your schedule? Malik, I've been alone for 3 years. And even before that, I lived in the background of my own family. That's not fair, he snapped. It's true, she said softly. And I'm done pretending otherwise. He exhaled sharply, trying to regain control of the conversation. Mom, we should talk in person. Tonight, I need to understand what's happening. You don't need to understand, Evelyn said. You need to respect it. Theo watched her silently, not interfering, not guiding, simply standing there. Letting her find her own strength, Malik lowered his voice. Mom, are you serious about this man? Evelyn's heartbeat steadied. I don't know where it will go, she said. But for the first time in a long time, I feel alive. And I won't apologize for that. A tense silence followed. Then Malik said, I'll call you later, and ended the call. Evelyn set her phone down. Her hands trembling, not from fear, but from release. Theo stepped closer. You handled that beautifully. I've never spoken to him like that, she whispered. Because no one ever gave you room to choose yourself, Theo said. Until now. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned back toward the table of travel brochures. Tuscany, Lake Como, Marrakesh, Santorini. Beautiful places she never thought she'd see. Theo's voice landed softly behind her. You don't have to decide anything today. Just know that you deserve joy. You deserve adventure. You deserve to be seen. Evelyn felt the words settle deep inside her, warm, steady, liberating, for the first time in her life. She let herself imagine a world bigger than duty, a world that included her happiness. A world where she wasn't an afterthought, a world where she could choose herself. And maybe choose him too. Late that afternoon, Evelyn returned home feeling lighter, calmer, and strangely hopeful after spending the morning with Theo. She brewed herself a cup of tea and settled into her living room chair. Finally ready to exhale, a sharp knock struck the front door. Not polite. Not hesitant. A knock full of entitlement. Evelyn opened the door and froze. Standing on her porch was Catherine Whitmore, Vanessa's mother. Her posture was rigid, her chin lifted as though she were stepping into the home of someone beneath her. Her designer heels clicked sharply as she walked in without being invited. Evelyn closed the door slowly. Mrs. Whitmore. This is unexpected. Catherine looked around the small house with a faint curl of disgust in her expression. I won't take much of your time, she said briskly. I'm here to resolve something before it spirals out of control. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Resolve what, exactly? Catherine smoothed the front of her blazer. Your friendship with Mr. Blackwell. Evelyn's stomach tightened. My friendship with Theo is not your concern. I'm afraid it is, Catherine replied. Because Mr. Blackwell now controls the building where our company operates, and you seem to have influence. Her eyes narrowed. The Whitmore family has always handled its business discreetly. We don't need outside complications. Evelyn folded her arms. I'm not interfering in your business. A thin, cold smile spread across Catherine's face. Let's prevent that from ever becoming a possibility. She opened her designer bag, pulled out a checkbook, and wrote swiftly. Then she tore out the slip and held it out between two manicured fingers. Evelyn stared at the paper. $50,000. Her heart thudded painfully. Catherine kept her expression neutral. This should help you. You're retired. You live modestly. You can use this money however you see fit. Evelyn felt heat rush to her face. Not embarrassment, but a slow rising flame of anger. You think you can buy me off? She asked. This isn't a buy-off, Catherine said smoothly. It's a solution. A polite incentive for you to step back, create distance. Stop complicating matters with Mr. Blackwell, and stop filling Malik's head with ideas that disrupt his marriage. Evelyn stared at her in disbelief. Malik is my son. I haven't filled his head with anything. You've already caused tension, Catherine replied sharply. Malik is uneasy. Vanessa is upset. And frankly, you've had your life. Let them have theirs without interference. Evelyn's voice cooled. So this money is for me to disappear quietly? Catherine gave a thin shrug. Call it consideration. Evelyn felt her pulse drum in her ears. In one slow, steady motion, she took the check, then she tore it straight down the middle dot and again, until the pieces floated to the floor like confetti. Catherine gasped. Are you out of your mind? Evelyn's voice was low but steady. You don't get to stroll into my home, insult me, and assume I'll bend because of a check with too many zeros. I raised a son on a teacher's salary. I buried my husband with dignity. I've survived more than your kind of arrogance could ever imagine. Catherine's nostrils flared, humiliation flickering across her face. You're making a grave mistake. Everyone is for sale. You should know your place. Evelyn stepped closer, meeting her eyes without fear. And you should know yours. Especially now that you're talking to a woman Mr. Blackwell actually respects. For the first time, Catherine froze. Something shifted behind her eyes. Fear. Calculation, dawning realization. Evelyn opened the front door. Her voice calm and firm. I think you should leave. Catherine hesitated, then lifted her chin and walked out stiffly, as though trying to salvage the last pieces of her pride. The moment she stepped off the porch, Evelyn shut the door with a finality that vibrated through her entire chest. Her hands still trembled. But not from fear, from clarity. She picked up her phone and called Theo. He answered on the first ring. Evelyn? She came, Evelyn said, breath shaking. Vanessa's mother. She tried to bribe me. $50,000 to keep me away from you. A beat of silence. Not surprised, controlled. Focused. What did you do? Theo asked quietly. I tore the check, she said. All of it. Theo exhaled slowly, and she could hear the shift in his voice, something protective, deliberate. I was hoping you'd say that, he murmured. Get your purse, Evelyn. I'm coming to get you. Where are we going? To the place where decisions are made, he said. You and I are going to meet with my attorney. It's time the Whitmores learn that you cannot be bought, bullied, or erased. Evelyn pressed her hand to her chest as warmth spread through her. 50 years ago, fate took her voice. Tonight, she was getting it back standing beside a man who wasn't afraid to stand with her. Theo arrived at Evelyn's house within 15 minutes, calm but carrying the focused energy of a man already several steps ahead. He opened the passenger door for her, his voice soft but steady. Ready? Evelyn nodded, though her pulse raced from everything that had happened. Catherine's arrogance, the torn check, the humiliation she'd endured for years. But next to Theo, she felt grounded, stronger than she ever remembered feeling. The drive took them to a sleek, modern building in Midtown. The glass gleamed under the afternoon sun. And the nameplate near the entrance read, Chun and Davenport, corporate law specialists inside. The atmosphere was crisp and quiet, the kind of place where decisions worth millions were made before lunch. They stepped into a private office where a woman in her late 40s rose from behind her desk. Tall, poised, black, tailored suit sharp enough to slice through steel. Evelyn, she greeted warmly. I'm Margaret Chen. Theo told me you'd be joining us. Evelyn didn't know what to say. She simply shook her hand. Surprised by Margaret's gentle confidence, Theo explained the situation plainly. Catherine's visit. The attempted bribe, the disrespect. The manipulation. Margaret listened without interruption, her expression sharpening. This tracks with everything I've seen from the Whitmore organization, she said. They're bleeding financially. If they lose their main location, they're done. They won't survive a relocation. Not with the debt they've taken on. Evelyn's eyebrows lifted. They seemed very wealthy. Margaret nodded. Old money image. But their actual liquidity? She tapped a file on her desk. Fragile. One wrong move and the facade cracks. Theo seated himself beside Evelyn. Which is why, he said, we're going to give them a lease renewal. Strict, binding, and on our terms. Margaret slid a folder toward Evelyn. I've drafted several options, but Theo suggested something more corrective. Inside the folder was a document more powerful than anything Evelyn had ever seen. Rehabilitation lease agreement. It included a significant increase in rent mandatory public. Acknowledgement of wrongful treatment toward Evelyn A. clause requiring respectful conduct toward all parties connected to Theo A. pledge from the Whitmore organization to cease manipulative behaviors penalties for any breach, including immediate eviction and near the end, a signature line for Evelyn Holt. Her breath caught. Me, I'm part of this. Theo nodded. You're not a side figure in this story. You're a signatory. They answer to you too. Her fingers trembled as she touched the document. For years she had been treated as invisible, and now she was being placed beside billionaires. Attorneys and power brokers like she belong there. Margaret continued. This agreement is completely legal. They'll hate it, but they'll sign it. They have no choice. Their company depends on retaining that building. Evelyn looked between them. I never wanted revenge. This isn't revenge, Theo said. This is accountability. Margaret folded her hands. And Evelyn, if they want this lease, they must publicly correct what they allowed at the wedding. No vague speeches. No excuses. A real apology. A real apology, Evelyn repeated softly. For years she had wanted Malik to see her. To stand up for her. To choose her. Now the entire Whitmore empire would have to acknowledge what they'd done. Theo touched her hand gently. You don't have to sign. But I want you to understand, you have power here. Real power. For the first time, she believed him. Later that evening, Evelyn arrived home exhausted but steadier. She had barely removed her shoes when her phone buzzed violently across the table. Malik calling. She answered slowly. Hello? His voice exploded instantly. Mom, what did you do? Dad, Vanessa's father, he just called me. He said their attorney received some kind of rehabilitation lease. He said you were involved. What is going on? Evelyn held the phone calmly. I met with Theo's attorney. Why? Malik demanded. Why would you do something so extreme? They're saying this is extortion. It's not extortion, she said. It's consequences. For how they treated me. For how you treated me. Malik went silent for several seconds. Then, Mom, you're overreacting. No, she said firmly. For once I am reacting exactly as I should. Do you know what this means for Vanessa's family? For my job? For me? Malik's voice cracked with panic. Mom, you're putting everything at risk. I'm not putting anything at risk. They already did that when they decided disrespect was acceptable. He exhaled shakily, his voice dropping. Mom, I can't deal with this. Vanessa's family is furious. They think you and Theo are trying to take them down. Their behavior put themselves in this position, she said. Not me. Malik swallowed hard. So what now? What do you want? Evelyn spoke slowly, deliberately. I want respect. I want acknowledgement. And I want to know which family you stand with because you cannot keep choosing convenience over your mother. Silence. Malik, she continued softly, you have 72 hours to decide who you are. Not for me. For yourself. Her words hung in the air like truth he couldn't escape. Malik's voice broke. Mom, this is tearing everything apart. No, she said gently. This is putting things back together. And she ended the call calm. Steady, unafraid, for the first time in her life. She wasn't pleading for space in her son's world, but she was standing firmly in her own. 2 days later, Evelyn stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her soft cream blouse. She wasn't dressing up for anyone, not Malik, not the Whitmores, not society. She dressed for herself. For the woman she was finally becoming. Her phone buzzed. Theo. They accepted the terms. All of them. I'll pick you up at noon. Her breath hitched. It was happening. The Whitmores had signed the brutal, binding rehabilitation lease. And now the final condition, the one they hated most, was scheduled for. TODAY, a public apology. In front of Atlanta's elite. To the woman they had spent years belittling. Evelyn exhaled slowly and finished getting ready. The country club. Theo arrived in a dark gray Bentley, stepping out to open her door himself. His presence alone turned heads. The confidence, the composure, the quiet power he carried like a second skin. "You look incredible," he said, offering his arm. Evelyn smiled softly. "Thank you. For everything." He leaned closer. "Stay by me today. No one in that room outranks you." The country club lobby was filled with Atlanta's wealthiest families for the annual charity luncheon. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead. Staff circulated with trays of champagne. Conversations paused the moment Theo entered, and eyes flicked instantly to the elegant woman at his side. Evelyn felt those stares, but for once, they didn't shrink her. They straightened her spine. Margaret Chen stood near the front, giving Evelyn a subtle nod of approval. When the Whitmore family arrived, the atmosphere shifted. Richard Whitmore looked stiff and pale, his wife Diane equally tense. Vanessa and Malik walked slightly behind them. Malik's eyes darted to his mother, hesitant, conflicted, unsure where he stood. Richard stepped up to the podium, clearing his throat. "Good afternoon," he began, voice gripped with strain. "We have a statement to deliver before the luncheon begins." The room fell completely silent. Richard continued, "We owe a sincere public apology to Ms. Evelyn Holt." Gasps spread through the crowd. People whispered, confused. "The Whitmores apologizing to whom?" Vanessa stepped forward next, her expression trapped between humiliation and obligation. She forced her voice steady. "Miss Holt, at the wedding I spoke about you in a way that was disrespectful and unacceptable. I treated you as though you were not equal to us. That was wrong. Deeply wrong." Diane Whitmore followed. "We allowed assumptions and prejudice to cloud our judgment. We minimized you. We are here today to acknowledge the harm we caused." Then Richard, "And we offer our full apology. Without excuse. Without justification." Cameras flashed around the room as society members watched with disbelief. Theo's hand found the small of Evelyn's back, supportive, steady, and then it was Evelyn's turn. The master of ceremonies gestured to her. "Ms. Holt, would you like to respond?" She stepped forward. Not timidly, not apologetically. But with the grace of a woman who had survived storms that would have broken others. She took the microphone, her voice clear and steady. "I accept your apology," she said, "and I appreciate you acknowledging what happened." She didn't gush. She didn't bow. She didn't pretend the wounds were gone. She simply stood in her truth, dignified, unmovable, deserving. The crowd watched her with new eyes, respect, curiosity, admiration. Theo's gaze lingered on her with something deeper. And for the first time in decades, Evelyn felt free. After the luncheon, as they walked out together, sunlight washing over them, Evelyn felt lighter, as if she had shed a lifetime of quiet suffering. Theo opened her door again. "You handled that perfectly. You made it possible," she said softly. "No," he replied. "You did that. You showed them who you are." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. Malek. She hesitated, then answered. His voice was quiet. "Mom, can we talk? Just you and me." Evelyn stood still beside the car, the breeze lifting the ends of her hair. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She didn't shrink. She simply said, "I'll speak to you tomorrow." A pause. Then Malik asked softly, "Tomorrow?" She looked out over the parking lot, where people still watched her with new respect. "Yes," she said, her voice calm, rooted, strong. "Tomorrow. Your move." She ended the call and stepped into the car beside Theo. A new life, one she never thought she'd get, was waiting. And this time she wasn't stepping into it alone.